I appreciate that you are already in middle age and will inevitably be an old man by the time you are eligible for release from prison, but that is of your own making, because these were heinous crimes and you committed them at the age of 49.
As the trial ended with a life sentence, Jaswell Brown remained coldly silent, his actions seen as those of a Christmas devil, a bitter end to a tragedy of bloodshed and tears. In the early morning hours of the 25th of December, 2024, a terrible tragedy occurred in a quiet apartment block in Bletchley, Milton Keynes. At around 3 a.m., a hallway camera captured a man walking out of the apartment with blood-stained clothes, holding a knife, and a blank look in his eyes. Minutes later, residents noticed something was wrong and called the police. When the authorities entered the apartment, they discovered two women brutally murdered. One was the killer's girlfriend, the other was a neighbor. A peaceful Christmas Eve suddenly turned into a bloody disaster. Joanne Pearson, 38, is a self-employed woman who lives in her own flat on Santa Cruz Avenue, Milton Keynes. Her neighbors describe her as a gentle, friendly person with a positive attitude towards life. Joanne previously worked as an assistant at a local shop and was well liked by her colleagues for her warm personality and genuine kindness. The apartment next door is home to Tiona Grant, 24, a university student who studies part-time and works part-time at a coffee shop in town. Tiona is optimistic, always smiling, and has good relationships with everyone around her. She is often described as a role model of young people full of ambition and positive energy. Jaswell Brown, 49, is Joanne's boyfriend. He has a more complicated background than the other two women. Brown has a criminal record and has struggled with crack cocaine addiction for years. Despite his dark past, Joanne still chooses to be with him, hoping that love and trust can help this man change. Three people, three different fates, but all caught up in an unexpected tragedy, right on the most peaceful Christmas night of the year. At first, Joanne's relationship with Jaswell Brown offered her some hope for a normal life. They had moments that seemed happy, quiet evenings, promises of self-improvement, and a belief that Brown's past could be left behind. But that was just the surface. Behind the apartment door, the reality was different. Brown was still deep in drugs, especially crack cocaine, the stimulant that had sent his life spiraling into darkness. His addiction made him controlling, constantly questioning Joanne, unreasonably jealous, and prone to fits of rage over the smallest things. Joanne tried many times to help her boyfriend give up his old ways. She advised, encouraged, and even forgave him after each time he broke his promise. But as time went on, she realized more and more, the man standing in front of her was no longer the man she once loved, but a distorted, unstable, and increasingly dangerous version. Joanne's silent suffering lasted until the end of the year. No one knew that Christmas that year was her final limit. A few weeks before Christmas 2024, the atmosphere in the Santa Cruz Avenue apartment complex began to become unsettled. Joanne Pearson's neighbors frequently heard loud arguments coming from inside her apartment. The sounds of smashing, angry words between two people, especially a man's voice with an agitated tone, made many people worried. Joanne once kicked Jaswell Brown out of the house after discovering he had relapsed into crack cocaine use. But Brown didn't stay away for long. He returned, made excuses, begged for forgiveness, and then it all happened again. This time, his return was more dangerous. Brown began stalking Joanne. He prowled the hallways, peeked through doors, and became paranoid that she was seeing another man. The controlling obsession turned to simmering anger. Joanne tried to bear it. She still hoped he would change. But what happened next proved that she had misjudged how dangerous he was. In the final week before the tragedy, Brown's behavior became increasingly erratic. He was seen repeatedly walking around the building in the middle of the night, rambling on in a drug-induced stupor. He once knocked on Joanne's door at 3 a.m., demanding that she open the door without giving any reasonable excuse. Joanne considered calling the police, but then backed down, partly out of fear, partly out of some semblance of faith that he would control himself. No one in the building knew that Jaswell Brown had hidden a long knife in his coat pocket, the weapon he carried whenever he tried to approach Joanne. The small apartment, once her safe haven, had become a suffocating cage. Inside, feelings of anxiety, stress, and helplessness built up day by day, like a silent ticking bomb. Around 3 a.m., the 25th of December, 2024, while much of the neighborhood was still asleep on Christmas Eve, Joanne Pearson was alone in her apartment, unaware that her ex-boyfriend had just snuck into the building's hallway. Hallway security cameras captured the moment Jaswell Brown appeared at the entrance to the apartment. His left hand was in his jacket pocket, where he had hidden the knife he had brought with him. Joanne's door was unbroken. Either he had used an old key, or she had not locked it properly after a stressful day. Within minutes of entering, the tragedy occurred. There was no sign of a prolonged struggle. He attacked immediately. Joanne was stabbed a total of 31 times, concentrated in the chest and abdomen. Some of the wounds showed that she tried to struggle, but was completely helpless in the face of her rage. Brown then continued to use a hard object, possibly a baseball bat, to hit the victim in the head. The blow was determined to be fatal, fracturing the skull. Joanne died at the scene. Blood from her body was spread across the living room floor. The scene was described as extremely brutal. Blood was spread across the floor. No signs of life. But Joanne's murder wasn't the end of it. As he left the apartment, Brown knocked on the door of the apartment next door, that of Tiona Grant, a 4-year-old student he had seen chatting with Joanne in the hallway on several occasions. It's unclear whether Tiona had heard the noise beforehand, but she may have opened the door in a low alert state, thinking someone needed help. She didn't have time to react. Brown brutally attacked his second victim. Tiona was stabbed multiple times, including a fatal blow to the neck that left her collapsed in the living room. Unlike Joanne, Tiona was not romantically involved with the killer. She was an unfortunate witness, or simply someone he thought was involved in his jealous fantasies. The entire sequence of events from Brown entering the house to leaving took less than 15 minutes, but the consequences were irreversible. 2 women dead in their own home, on what should have been the most peaceful night of the year. At 3:30 a.m., police were dispatched to the Santa Cruz Avenue apartment complex after a resident called to report screams and saw a man running from the building with a knife in his hand. When they arrived, they found the door to Joanne Pearson's apartment ajar, with the woman's body lying motionless on the floor, surrounded by blood. Just a few feet away, they found a trail of blood running down the hallway to the second apartment, where police found the body of Tiona Grant, also lying in a pool of blood, right in the middle of the living room. In addition to the 2 victims, a small dog in Tiona's apartment was found trembling and suffering from minor injuries, likely stabbed during the chaos. The scene was described as extremely serious, not only because of the level of violence, but because it happened so quickly, so unexpectedly, and in just a few square meters of living space. The forensic report confirmed the brutality of the 2 murders. Joanne Pearson died at the scene with 31 stab wounds, mostly to the chest and abdomen. She also suffered severe head injuries, caused by being hit with a hard object, identified as a baseball bat. The skull injury was the immediate cause of death. Tiona Grant suffered multiple stab wounds, including one through the neck that severed the carotid artery, causing her to bleed rapidly and die at the scene. Both victims were defenseless. There was no evidence that they had fought back. The forensic examiners concluded that the attack showed a complete loss of control, spontaneous and driven by blind rage, not detailed planning. This was not just murder, it was a massacre in a fit of rage. After the scene was sealed off, police quickly issued a warrant for the suspect. based on a clear description from witnesses and security cameras. Less than 4 hours after the incident, Jaswell Brown was found wandering near Bletchley Station, not far from the scene.
Oh no! Listen, put your legs out. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
When he was arrested, Brown still had blood on his sleeves and shoes, matching the traces at the scene. In his backpack, the police confiscated the murder knife, along with a torn jacket with blood stains in many places. Initial analysis showed that the murder weapon completely matched the wounds of both victims. With a clear chain of evidence, from camera images, witness statements, to physical evidence at the scene, the police determined that this was a premeditated murder, committed in a state of mental instability and related to stimulants. During his initial interview, Jaswell Brown denied all charges. He said he didn't remember anything, claiming he was just passing through the apartment complex and had nothing to do with the incident. However, when investigators showed him security camera footage, forensic results, and eyewitness testimony that he had seen him leave the scene with the knife, Brown's demeanor changed.
Not self-defense, plain murder. There's been a murder, there was a murder in there. You know what I mean? Not self-defense, plain murder. A murderer. Get it?
In total, there's 3 people being stabbed. Without leaving anything out, tell me what happened.
No comment.
Do you know anything about anyone being stabbed yesterday on the 25th of December?
No comment.
After a few minutes of silence, he began to cry, then broke down, saying everything was out of control. During the remainder of the interview, Brown admitted to having used crack cocaine in the hours before, feeling paranoid, and being haunted by the idea that Joanne was cheating on him and seeing someone else. When asked why he attacked Tiona Grant, he repeated that everything was a blur, and that she probably saw something she shouldn't have. The statements were inconsistent, mixed with panic and remorse, but also indirect admissions to an irreparable crime. The investigation quickly built up a solid line of evidence against Jaswell Brown. Hallway security cameras clearly recorded him entering Joanne's apartment, as well as leaving with a knife in his hand. Blood at the scene, which extended from the first apartment to the second, matched the DNA of the 2 victims and Brown himself. The murder weapon was found in the suspect's backpack, with bloodstains that had not dried. Brown's fingerprints were on the knife handle and baseball bat, ruling out the possibility that the killer was someone else. In addition, testimony from neighbors confirmed that Brown had repeatedly harassed Joanne, banged on her door in the middle of the night, and behaved strangely in the days leading up to the murder. One even described seeing him staring at Tiona's apartment as if he was watching her. According to neighbors and acquaintances, Joanne had concerns about her safety when she was alone, and once shared that she felt watched and didn't feel safe at home alone. Finally, Brown's medical records showed that he had been diagnosed with mild psychosis, had a long history of crack cocaine addiction, and had been in rehab no fewer than 3 times in the past decade. All of these factors were presented to the court, creating a comprehensive, incontrovertible record of his behavior and motive. On the 15th of April, 2025, at Luton Crown Court, Jaswell Brown formally pleaded guilty to first-degree murder of Joanne Pearson and Tiona Grant. The trial was heavy. The victims' families sat quietly in the back row, while Brown remained silent throughout the trial, never once turning his head or showing remorse. The defense attorney argued that the defendant lost control due to the effects of drugs and was not fully conscious at the time of the crime. However, the judge rejected this argument, stating that voluntary drug use cannot be a reason for mitigating criminal responsibility.
Dr. Cummings considers, and I accept, that the use of illegal drugs was the immediate trigger for the commission of these offences, and that they occurred, and I quote his report, quote, within a disturbed mental state best explained by intoxication, unquote. That intoxication was voluntary.
He acted with unacceptable violence. The judge said in his sentencing, 2 women, one who loved him and one who was completely innocent, lost their lives in a blind, uncontrolled rage. This was a deliberate and exceptionally cruel act of murder. Jaswell Brown was sentenced to life in prison without parole, ending a case that shocked the local community for months afterward.
Stand up, please, Mr. Brown. The sentences of the court are as follows. For the murder of Joanne Pearson, the sentence is imprisonment for life, with a minimum term of 38 years and 194 days. For the murder of Tiona Grant, the sentence is imprisonment for life, with a minimum term of 38 years and 194 days. Those 2 sentences will run concurrently with each other. For the attempted murder of Jacob Brown, the sentence of the court is 18 years imprisonment. For the attempted murder of Bradley Latter, the sentence is 21 years imprisonment. For causing unnecessary suffering to the dog Tilly, the sentence is 9 months imprisonment. For possessing a knife in a public place, the sentence is 18 months imprisonment. The sentences for those last 4 offences will run concurrently with each other and concurrently with the sentences for the 2 murders.
In his final verdict, the judge condemned Brown's brutality, likening him to the devil on Christmas Eve, a night that should have been for forgiveness, but instead stained with the blood of 2 innocent women. Throughout the trial, Brown did not shed a tear, did not apologize, nor did he show any remorse. When the verdict was announced, the victims' families burst into tears, not only because justice had been served, but also because the painful truth had been confirmed. Joanne and Tiona were gone forever, by someone they had trusted or lived next door to as a normal neighbor. Jaswell Brown was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 39 years. If he lives to see parole, he will be nearly 90 years old, and will likely never be free. The public consensus is that the sentence was appropriate, reflecting the brutality and danger of his actions. But for the families of the 2 victims, no sentence can make up for the pain of loss. Memories, unfinished plans, all were cut short in the darkest moment of their lives. A relationship built on love and trust ended in blood and tears. Blind love, silence in the face of violence, and the specter of addiction, these 3 factors, when combined, created an irreparable tragedy. This case is more than just a crime story. It is also a warning to all those trapped in a toxic relationship. If you, or someone you love, are being controlled, threatened, or emotionally abused, don't stay silent. Speak up. Seek help before it's too late.